Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to talk to you about a novel which I published in 2016. It was written in French and it is entitled Le Mystère du Triangle Sacré. But before I start talking about this novel and what the structure is like, we're going to first have a look at the book cover, or the cover page. So on top you have the title, as you can see, and then right below you have the Egyptian pyramids. Well, of course, the Egyptian pyramids are the most identifiable and recognizable pyramids that exist. And these pyramids were actually named after the pharaohs who commissioned their construction. So in the background you have the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is the Pyramid of Cheops. And the one in the middle is the Pyramid of Khafre. And the smallest one is the Pyramid of Menkaure. Then we have three men, and this is the protagonist or the main character of the story. And then you have the Nile River, obviously, and all the greenery and the vegetation along the Nile River. And on the back cover you have the synopsis or the summary of the novel and the author's biography, which is my own personal biography in this case. So what is this book about? Well, to put it simply, this book is about the story of a 15-year-old teenager named Sami Shaidil who moves with his family from London to a haunted mansion in Scotland. And once he's in that mansion, many weird and strange events start happening. You know, hearing unexplained noises, moving objects, and so forth. And on top of that, that mansion is located right next to a very old, gloomy, and deteriorated cemetery. And then this boy would eventually discover a magical book which will take him back to Pharaoh's time. And once this boy, Sami Shaidil, is in ancient Egypt, he will meet and encounter people who have truly existed in reality. This includes Pharaoh Ramesses II, his wife Nefertari, as well as his children and so forth. And in order for this boy to come back to his era, to his current era, which is 21st century, he will need to solve a mystery that the ancient Egyptians call the mystery of the Sacred Triangle. Yet I want to emphasize that this is pure fiction, that this is the pure product of my own personal imagination. So, in a nutshell, that's basically what this novel is about. Now we're going to have a look at the inspiration, how I actually got inspired to write this book. I'd like to tell you to begin with that I have, since a very young age, always been exceptionally impressed and fascinated by the ancient Egyptian civilization. And it is usually agreed that ancient Egypt has a big, huge grip on us and it still continues to mystify us. For example, when you look at the pyramids, it always makes you wonder how ancient people managed to construct such astonishing monuments with very primitive tools. So it does add to the atmosphere or to the mystery which surrounds this ancient Egyptian civilization, and I personally consider it to be the world's greatest civilization. So the initial idea for this novel came when I was around the age of 8, and then I started writing the very first pages when I was around 13, and it was a 3-year process from the age of 13, and then I finished draft number 1 at the age of 16. And then once I finished writing draft number 1, I started refining this draft to make sure that everything is coherent, everything is good. And then right before the publication, I gave it to an expert who is specialized in French literature. And I wanted to get his feedback. It is always good to interact with other people, to share with them your writings and so forth, just to maybe you will see things from different angles. So I gave it to an expert just to make sure that everything is good, and you know. So yeah, that's basically how I got inspired to write this novel. So this book is composed of 157 pages, and it is divided into 12 chapters. So I'm going to read you the titles of those chapters in French, and then later on I will give you the translation into English. Okay? Chapter number 1 is entitled Un mauvais présage, which is a bad omen or a bad feeling. Chapter 2, Le nouveau manoir, the new mansion. Chapter 3, La baignoire sanglante et le mystérieux livre, so the bloody bathtub and the mysterious book. Chapter 4, Les trois livres réunis, the three books united. Chapter 5, Ancient Egypt, or l'Égypte ancienne. Chapter 6, Le pharaon Ramsès, Pharaoh Ramses. Chapter 7, Horus et Seth, Horus and Seth. Well, Horus and Seth are one of the most important divinities in the ancient Egyptian mythology. Horus is traditionally the god of light, while Seth is the god of evil. Okay? Chapter 8, La Vallée des Rois, or the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings is a very important archaeological site in Egypt because many important kings and queens had been buried there, including Pharaoh Tutankhamun, whose tomb had been discovered in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. So that was, okay, so this is chapter number 12, chapter number 8, that was the Valley of the Kings. Chapter 9, Le Triangle Rouge, or the Red Triangle. Chapter 10, La Vengeance de Seth, Seth's Revenge. Chapter 11, Le Mystère du Triangle Sacré, the Mystery of the Sacred Triangle, which is basically the title of this novel. And then finally, chapter 12, De Retour en Égypte, or it would be translated as Back in Egypt. Okay? So now I'm going to read you one of my favorite passages in this novel. I will read it in French, and then later on I will give you the translation into English. Okay? So, bientôt, nous atteignîmes un hall immense dans lequel n'importe quel bruit, si minuscule soit-il, pouvait résonner en écho. Le surveillant s'éclaircissait la gorge à plusieurs reprises. Nous aperçûmes ensuite, à 20 mètres en face de nous, un homme assis sur un trône royal. C'était lui, le grand, le célèbre pharaon Ramsès. Le pharaon Ramsès nous contemplait au fur et à mesure qu'on s'approchait de lui. Il était grand et mince, vêtu d'un prestigieux némès royal, d'une barre postiche d'une couleur noirâtre et d'une longue jupe de laine. Il portait des sandales en papyrus, ainsi qu'une demi-douzaine de bracelets en or sur les bras. À proximité de lui était assis, sur un tabouret, un homme âgé d'une trentaine d'années qui déployait sans cesse des feuilles de papyrus. C'était sûrement le messager du pharaon. So, as I told you, I actually did take some time to translate this passage into English. But of course, before translating any literary text, it's always good to remember that we need to preserve the aesthetic and the poetic aspect of the original language, but also we need to take into consideration the cultural aspect of the target language. Okay? This includes knowing how to translate idioms, proverbs, popular expressions, and so forth. So, of course, there is no one single, unique, and absolute translation, but a close translation to the passage which I just read should be similar to the following. Then we reach a huge hall in which any noise, no matter how tiny, could produce echoes. The prison guard cleared his throat several times. Then we saw about 60 feet in front of us a man sitting on a royal throne. I could hardly believe it. It was him, the great, the notorious Pharaoh Ramses II. Pharaoh Ramses II gazed at us as we approached him. He was tall and thin, wearing a dark, false or artificial beard. He was also wearing sandals made of papyrus, as well as half a dozen of gold bracelets in his arms. Next to him, a man in his 30s was sitting on a stool. He was unfolding papyrus sheets. He was certainly the scribe of the pharaoh. So that was the translation of the passage taken from my book. I think this brings us to the end of the video. If you guys have any questions or any comments or any suggestions, please don't hesitate to share them in the below section of my YouTube channel. It was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for your attention.